We've gotten a really good overview now of the workforce of the future, and now we want to get industry specific. We want to talk about the future of power, charting a new course in the energy market. And I cannot think of a better person to bring up to discuss that than Uli Hörner. He's the head of innovation and management at Energie Baden-Württemberg. Uli Hörner, thank you very much for being here. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, hi everybody. Maybe for starters, a few initial remarks. I've seen change in the 80s when I was in California. The topic was mainframe industry being replaced by small computers that fit on the desktop. In the 90s, I was working for the telco market, seeing similar stuff. The change from incumbents, fixed line phone towards mobile, digital solutions. And now I'll be talking about power. These remarks are not per accident, but they show you that what we see in the power is not the first time. There are very comparable markets that have experienced the same thing, and yet we still haven't understood how to react properly. Particularly the ones that work for a utility know what I'm talking about. So I would like to try in 20 minutes, not sure whether I'll make it, but I will give it a shot, our view on what's happening right now. And that said, for us in the energy market, it's been years, decades, where our business model hasn't changed. So the mainframe people at IBM thought the same thing, because the business had been working beautifully for 30, 40 years, but still it was disrupted. If you analyze what's happening in comparable markets, it's something that comes together to make the existing business model change. And it's really those four topics and issues that you see there. It's like new technologies, digital technologies that enable new solutions, but them by themselves are not enough. You also have to hit grounds on new trends, so people must be ready to go the next step by means of, are we ready to satisfy new customer expectations? And lastly, and that's particularly true for us, but it was also true for the telco business, regulation can speed up that process. Sometimes it's intentional, that politics say, we want competition. You remember Deutsche Telekom, an incumbent in Germany, used to have like 98% market share, and it was the politicians that decided that we want to have competition in the telco market. So those four really drive change. Let's look at the first one, digitalization. I was around, and here's some examples, how digital technology can drive new offers, mostly, as you can see here, by startups that trust that new technologies have a chance to provide new services, and if they're successful, they're driving different and new customer experience. I was around, you see Apple here. I was around in California in the 80s when the first Mac hit the market. Some of you still have the picture. It's this small little machine. It was technology-wise, it was fantastic. It had a 3.5-inch floppy, which was technology not seen before, and everybody had been used to 8-inch, 5.25-inch floppy disks, and so this guy came up with this one. It had an object-oriented surface. You could drag and drop. It had characters that were not out of the ASCII code, but they were bitmapped. The problem was it failed because the technology wasn't ready yet. So the guy coming back in the 90s, before Apple almost went bankrupt, just did the same thing, but based on new technology that was able to make it happen. You remember, not only did he realized the vision that he had in the 80s, but in the 90s and beginning of 2000, he was able to build a whole new ecosystem around it. Just one example for how technology can change the way we think. And the question is, if this is happening all around us, when we're using WhatsApp, when we're getting used to other stuff, why would that not also have an impact on the way we deal with power in our market? And the answer is, of course, it won't. Second one, new trends. I have a picture here of a project that some of you may know. It's happening in Brooklyn, in New York, where a street has been taken off-grid and they connect consumers with producers of energy. There's two issues here. This trend to becoming independent of electric utilities is one that we've seen for many years. You know, not many people like big utilities. Not many people like big banks. So if they have a chance to cut loose from that connection, they will do it. The second issue here is blockchain. Everybody has heard about blockchain. It's a new technology that has only one goal: to get rid of central instances. So a little bit like getting rid of a mainframe where you have central places of technology and you distribute the intelligence into a local area network. In the 80s, nobody thought this was happening. Now everybody has a PC, we have pads, we have everything carrying with us. So make no mistake, don't underestimate that trend. Customer expectations. This is a shot of a live community that gives you an idea what's happening with the basic model that we have been looking at for the last decades. Hi. We're coming from central production and providing energy to companies, to users, to end users, to communities. Top down, from a central, strong position. If you look at this picture, if you look closely, you see there are producers out of a region. Can be PV, can be wind, can be water, where we, with a software platform, connect the electricity produced by these guys. At the same time, you as a customer, somebody who lives in this region, you can sign up to get your power from these guys. Okay? This is life. This is no funny stuff. It's happening right now. What's important to know is, in order to make this happen, we're not talking about IT systems that we're all used to and have been building in the last 50 years. This stuff is only possible because there's a startup out there in Berlin who made it their vision to make this happening. And it's just the start of a movement. And the question is, if this takes over, where does it leave the electric utility with the existing business model? And the answer is, if this becomes mainstream, they don't need a Stadtwerk or a big utility, at least not for the supply of a commodity product like power and gas. Not necessary. So make no mistake, people are getting used to this, and we're seeing it as far as revenue is concerned. For the startup that does it, the region likes it. It has another effect too. Nobody likes windmills because they don't look nice in the area. But if you can say in your hotel to your customers that the power you use comes from that windmill on the hill, something changes in the way you look at this thing. So we think these trends with that customer expectation is something we have to really watch out for. The fourth point is regulation. We could have known that beginning of 2000, when the coalition at the time decided to move ahead with renewables, that we are here where we are now with a over 30% piece of renewables in the market right now. What regulation has done is not only push renewables, but change the pricing mechanism on the wholesale price. So when you read in the paper the problems of the big companies, They're there, and they're coming faster than ever seen before. Most of the conventional plans that we are running are out of money today. And that's a big issue for all of us in the big utilities, because we have to deal now with a lot of efficiency, with cost-cutting programs in order to survive. I mean, it's really dramatic as this. But if you would have looked 10 years back and you would have trusted that regulation and policy wants to do it, one could have known. What we didn't know is Fukushima. I mean, that didn't help because it just accelerated the process. The second issue is decentral production. You know that we have over 1.5, probably 1.6 million PV systems decentral in locations, on the roof, in the community. If you look at these assets, compared to the 80% ownership of central assets that the utilities had, 90% of the decentral assets do not belong to us anymore. Okay, so a big portion of that is now in other hands. So the question is, where does it leave our business model? Big problem. And last not least, in order to accelerate what's happening, we see battery, we see storage, prices are falling just as PV, and they enable self-consumption business models even more. Now, self-consumption, meaning you use what you produce on your roof, of course, takes away the business proposition of an electric utility. So all these issues nag away your core business of the last decades, and that is a problem. Now we also know why we don't have to talk about a sense of urgency in the electric utility business in Germany. It is there. And that has changed even in the mindset. I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, some other companies were still trying to push for keeping the status quo intact. But make no mistake, I think that game is over, long over. Now, good and bad. We're not alone. This has happened many times before. Different markets, different story. Where all of this comes together and new offers, new trends cannibalize or wipe out companies with an existing old proposition if they do not react appropriately. 2 examples, Kodak. In the 90s, 19 billion revenue, 75% plus market share in analog, film, and exposures and so forth. Didn't see digitalization coming. Had a camera developed, 28% market share, and then management decided to drop out because it didn't believe the story. Went bankrupt 2012. So, what does it really tell you? Another example, I mean, Polaroid, you know, not there anymore. Netflix is a good one. Netflix now is increasing its business dramatically because technology is there, bandwidth is there. Started with video on demand because the guy hated to pay a fine when he forgot to return his video cassette to Blockbuster Video. So he made this subscription model, but he switched on the way towards streaming. And everybody who has Netflix at home, well, your good portion is digital already. I think once you've done that, you will not return to classic DVD, you will not return to classical TV. You just watch when you like to watch and when you want and you have the time. This guy, nobody knows, but maybe you have read, this guy the CEO of Netflix, went to Blockbuster Video, made him an offer to say, why don't you invest in my company? I have this great idea. And Blockbuster Video guy said, don't believe in it, don't do it. And one of the biggest bankruptcies ever, the whole chain of Blockbuster Video, I think with 2,000 shops went bankrupt many years ago. So, but there are also good examples of companies who've understood. Microsoft profited from PCs. In the beginning, bad technology, worse software. Anybody who's ever tried MS Word 1.0 knows what I'm talking about. But the business model was growing because people liked the idea. And the problem is, if you do that and you are an incumbent, you have good things and you have bad things. The problem is if you underestimate new companies with a new proposition and you don't react early enough, you cannot react at all anymore. And I'm going to try to look at the minuses. When you are in a business for 100 years or a 50-year successful business, what has happened is that your cost structure in your business adheres to the gross margins of your old existing business model. IBM mainframes had a gross margin of 60% on their IBM mainframe computers. And all of a sudden came a PC or a Seagate or others, and they got away with 10, 15, 20% gross margins. So now what's happening? You're able to go into the market much cheaper. And even if your product is not 100% technology ripe, perfect, so forth, if it's so low price, you will find people who will buy it. And all of a sudden, you pick up, and some will be successful. And once you are so successful that you become mainstream, the incumbent looks and says, "Oh, what's happening?" And once he realizes it's too late, you cannot react because you're not able to get rid of your cost structure so quickly. Because you cannot just, what do you want to do? Fire 1,000 people all of a sudden out of nothing is not the right way of doing it, and usually you're not doing it at all. So I think what we have to do is just very early on realize what's happening out there in the market, have an opinion about it, and start developing a mindset and a strategy that makes sure that you will not be surprised by other players in the market and react early enough before you lose control at the later stage. There's a lot of good stuff a utility brings with it. It has, as you see here, great customer base, millions of customers, something every startup would like to have, but can't get immediately because they're not known. Utilities have a well-known brand. Everybody in the South knows EnBW, E.ON, RWE, everybody knows them. Long track record of providing services reliably. That's important. So there is a trust and a credibility in an offer that a utility has proven to supply for many, many decades. But it has, on the other side, a problem with competitive cost structures. It has a mindset that has been developed over decades, but it has also one, and that's a problem. The process world of an incumbent adheres to and fits to the business model that it has done for decades. The process world of a startup, the process world of new business models is completely different. And the question is, how do we deal with that? And I'm going to give you, I have 2 minutes, 15 seconds left, but bear with me. I'll give you a recipe which may work for you. It's a recipe that we have been looking at for the last years and we believe in strongly as far as transformation of a utility in the future world is concerned. There's 5 steps that are important. 1, and this is not theory, this is based on experience of the last 3 years since I've been doing innovation at EnBW. Number 1, make sure that innovation is part of the corporate strategy. Why is that important? You cannot do a little bit of innovation. It's not, many of you know there are companies out there that do a little bit of innovation. They spend even a lot of money. But if you put innovation in the hierarchy very below in the basis, you have a lot of people working on it, but it never drops up into the management, never hears what's happening out there, it's not going to fly. So, number 1, innovation must be part of the strategy. Number 2, create new space for innovation. I'm a Christensen fan. I believe the same way he believes in his theory and his practical examples. Disruptive business models cannot be developed from within the company at its core, because culture, processes, the whole thing, the DNA of the company is not a natural to make that happen. So it implies that if you are serious about business model generation, you need to have a different space. This is the space that we have created in here right at the Rheinhafen in order to protect small, tiny plants that have a chance, that must have a chance to grow, because in the home turf inside the company, they would have no chance at all. 3, if you develop business models, put the customer in the middle. The discussion before also mentioned it a little bit. I mean, we're a country with a lot of technology. We love technology, great stuff, but we forget the customer a lot. So turn this around, put the customer in the middle, and make sure that you are at the right place, agile, lean, and put the customer in the process. For us, it means we start with design thinking. We have copied all the good stuff from the startup world. We're talking business model canvas, we're talking lean startup, and a process where at every step, if it doesn't fly, if we cannot prove that the customer has a value from what we think is right, we will take it out and start new. This process also, I mean, everybody startup knows this. I mean, you get money for a phase, and if you don't hit the targets, you're off. In our industry, you get money for a year or a year and a half. You develop something. When you're ready, the customer has moved on. There's no guarantee that this money that you spend really hits a problem and solves a problem. So, number 3, put the customer in the middle. Number 4, connect with startups for speed and market insight. It's not only the fact that a startup just does what it thinks is right. So there's a lot of speed, there's no hierarchy, the team believes in the story and the vision of that startup. That's fantastic. But there's something else that's important for a utility like ours. If we connect into the startup world, we get a sense and a feel for what propositions, what new business models are out there that may have an impact of our business. And you don't find out if you're sitting in your office and you look out the window. You have to connect into the startup world. We have done it by, on the one side, founding a new venture company that enables us to invest in startups, but also internally create space for internal startups so they can nicely connect the external and the internal world. And that's best of both worlds. It makes a lot of sense. There's one more. Transform company culture. This is the toughest one. And you see what's written there. It's all about people. The right people with the right mindset. Starting with the top. I think without top management and board attention on this thing, you will not be able to get through middle management to the basic employee of your company. And this is a tough task. It takes years in order to accomplish that. Generate value and take responsibility. It's a tough one because in the old business model, the leaders take responsibility and the employees do the work. In the new way of working, this is not functioning anymore. You have to reduce complexity, focus on use cases, but let the people do it. And every of you who has done some Scrum work or Agile work, you take the responsibility away from an organization and you give it to the team to make things happen. I think it's easily said, but it's the right way of doing it. Agile and fast, mistakes are okay. Picture this. If you're running a nuclear plant, you better be at 0% fault tolerance. So when you do this 20 years, everybody in his mindset knows 0% is it. Any little mistake is a problem. When you're generating new business models, it's the other way around. It's fine to go with an MVP with an 80% solution into the market and find out. So how do you deal with that transformation? big issue. We said small and cross-functional teams is one way of doing it. Decide later, deliver fast. Don't invest in 150% solution. Maybe the customer doesn't need. Start with less, just make things happening. Last but not least, leadership. I think you will only be successful when you are able to change the mindset of your leadership on all levels. 85% of employees at the base figure out the truth by what their line manager tells them. So even if the board wants to be innovative and great in everything, unless you get that last chain, that last key in the chain as a duplicator of your story, you will not transform the company. I'm sure that some of you in the audience know what I'm talking about. Yeah? So it's not only board, but it's a general issue for the leadership topic.
Sorry, we are running out of time.
One more conclusion.
One more last thought that I really got to cut you off.
I knew this would happen.
I hate to do it. It hurts me.
Bear with me 30 seconds. So the conclusion. I think electric utilities have a lot to offer, but you have to use it wisely. In order for the transition to succeed, there's got to be one thing. You have to be willing to do new stuff, willing to be changed, willing to do all the challenges of innovation, new methods, supporting company culture, and that transformation must be part of the C-level agenda. So I'm ready now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Uli Hunner.